When people in the Midlands want to talk, they talk to Will Faulkner.
Well, good morning. The Leaving Cert results are out. It's that annual Irish tradition where thousands of young people across the Midlands discover that one sheet of paper can contain somehow their entire future while simultaneously not determining it really anything. It's something that gives you a number. Life and living give you options. So if you didn't get the points you wanted, remember, life has a remarkable habit of finding alternative routes. Very few successful adults are ever asked, what did you get in the Leaving Cert? But if you did get the points you wanted, a huge congratulations. And so Midlands 103 is at Portlaoise College today, with thanks to People First Credit Union. And more from the young people here as the programme goes on. But also today, young men, are we waiting until it's too late to reach some of them? Water coolers. €10 million on public sector water coolers. Is that sensible spending, or has the government lost the run of itself? And getting soaked, cutting the grass is bad enough, but would you complain to Met Éireann about it? Well, somebody did. When you call 0818 300 103 is my number. You can text, you can WhatsApp 083 30 10 103, powered by Lamb Brothers Toyota in Tullamore. Let's see what's on the front pages today. Police ask for public order units at M9 crash gang funeral. So the funerals will begin over the coming days for the 5 teenagers who were killed in that crash last Sunday. And the Gardaí believe there is a risk that some other teenagers may bring scramblers, may perform dangerous stunts, all of which could be part of a funeral procession and put public safety at risk. Therefore, they want to have the public order unit stationed there. There is also some concern of a backlash from certain members of the public over any mourning for those teenagers. The Bishop of Kildare and Leighlin, meanwhile, has said he shares in the widespread revulsion, upset and anger after last week's fatal crash on the M9. And he says the community is still dealing with the impact of this tragic collision. And he talks about how the loss was so avoidable, how it will be a very tough road ahead for those in hospital. And he says the incident is a sharp reminder that all of us share an enormous responsibility when we sit behind the wheel at any time. That's the Bishop of Kildare and Leighlin, Dennis Nolte. Moving to the Irish Examiner and indeed the Irish Times, because they focus on the Leaving Cert as their main stories. Irish Examiner, a third of Leaving Cert exam grades are adjusted. And on the Irish Times, H1s fall as Leaving Cert grade inflation is cut again. So this goes back to the COVID pandemic, when students couldn't sit the exams in the usual way. So estimated grades were provided, and there was a certain amount of perhaps overestimation. And because of that grade inflation, they've been tapering down the extra marks over recent years. So in effect, if you sat the exam in 2025, you have an advantage over the students in 2026, who will in turn have an advantage over the students in 2027, because that will be the first year when there is no adjustment for this grade inflation. So that's on the front of the Irish Times and the Irish Examiner. The Irish Daily Star, no end to motorway madness. And on the Irish Daily Mirror, all talk and no action. A reference to TikTok not being prepared to appear before an Oireachtas committee to answer questions about why the platform allows content such as drivers going the wrong way on the motorway to be loaded on their news feeds. So the final front page, Irish Daily Mail, crackdown on Lucky Dip gang. It says, arrest of 3 joyriders under the age of 16 just days after tragedy. So Gardaí believe they may have been able to prevent another incident as a result of these arrests in Dublin. They tracked these 3 young people in a car travelling at 187 kilometres per hour. So that's what's on the front pages today. Let's go inside the papers. Local story, significant one. The North Midlands Credit Union, which has merged with a number of smaller credit unions around Mullingar and, as the name suggests, the North Midlands, it had proposed and had done a deal with Roscommon Credit Union to become an even larger body. It would have had €600 million in assets. It would have had 86,000 members if this tie-up had gone ahead. However, the plan has been rejected by the members of North Midlands Credit Union, whereas the members of Roscommon Credit Union were in favour, overwhelmingly, of this tie-up. So the reasons, well, there's some sort of concern, clearly, and we're going to get to the bottom of that at 10:30 this morning. But it required a qualified majority, a 75% vote in favour of the merger, and the vote failed to reach that threshold. So that's in the Irish Independent today, along with a very sad story of a young woman, Avril Tierney, from Portarlington, who was just 41 years of age with 2 small children when she received the life-changing news that she has breast cancer. And unfortunately, and despite aggressive rounds of chemotherapy and radiation and complicated surgeries, she has stage 4 cancer. So it is, unfortunately, a matter of time in some respects, and she has now launched a new book, a toolkit on how to survive the trauma. And she pays particular tribute to the people who helped her in hospital. They were amazing. She says you get an educational lesson on what could happen with chemo and what the plan is. The plan was to have chemo to reduce the lump, then a lumpectomy, followed by radiation on the area. It was positive from a medical point of view, but I was caught in, why is this happening to me? And I started to see little glimmers of hope. And anyway, she talks about how the staff in St. Vincent's Hospital were just game changers for her. So if you have that difficult journey ahead of you, the book is called Cancer, Chaos and Courage, and Avril will be on the programme with us on Monday. A letter to the Irish Independent, a modern moral. It says, I have one son whom I love, but am not close to. He is very self-involved, and he takes very little interest in my life. I love him, but I'm very involved in fundraising, and I always have been, for animal charities especially. And now that I'm getting older, I'm giving serious thought to donating what I have left to charity. I think it would be far more appreciated. Do you think I'm awful? The more I think about it, the more the idea appeals to me. If I could do such good, and my son will be fine, because he's not married, he does fine in his career, I'm thinking of speaking to my solicitor to put this in place over the coming weeks. I don't think she's wrong at all. If there's no close relationship there, and if he is independent himself, well, why not? It's your money. And even if you did have a close relationship, you're still under no obligation once your child turns 18. Now, that's, I suppose, the legal obligation. The moral obligation might be different. So, what would you do in that scenario? Apple is by far the biggest taxpayer in Ireland, and we can now put a number on it because for the first time, the amount of tax paid here has been disclosed in Apple's latest corporate accounts. So, €14.6 billion in their last financial year, which is the largest annual amount from any one company in the history of the state. So think about this. Ireland recorded an overall corporate tax take of €32.9 billion. So Apple is just under half of that. One company alone. That is how enormously dependent we are on Silicon Valley. Irish Independent has that story. The Journal, speaking of tax, tells us how we pay the second highest rate of excise duty on alcohol of any EU country. And the government needs to wake up to the reality that super high taxes on alcohol are killing our pub industry, or so says the Drinks Industry Group of Ireland. Well, they might say that, says you. So a pint of beer purchased in a pub in Ireland has 55 cent of excise duty compared to just 5 cent in Spain or in Germany. If you buy a bottle of whiskey, there's 11.92 of excise on that, and in Spain it's just €2.69. So we have high taxes on certain products. Just mention fuel, for instance, alcohol being another. Income? Well, there are countries in the EU that would have higher income tax rates than we do. But our corporate tax rate is not especially high. But yet you see the benefit of that because we get big companies like Apple willing to pay their bills here. So, bit of a trade-off, isn't it? A catering trolley is to be restored on a train from County Offaly next week. A catering trolley that has not been seen since the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. So if you are taking the Dublin-Galway train, then from Monday that service has finally been restored. And for anybody getting up early and who was a little bit peckish, it really was a pain not having it there. But you know that Irish Rail has to pay a catering company to come in. I would have thought they'd be able to rent the space. You'd be shooting fish in a barrel if you were selling sambos and coffees and all of those nice things to passengers. But seemingly, they have to fork out for the privilege. And one other matter. Miss Offaly is seeking to change perspectives on Leaving Cert results. And Miss Offaly 2026 is none other than Cleo Knight. And she says this time of year is a reminder of the importance of perseverance and how far you can go even when Leaving Cert results are not ideal. Because she herself left school with fewer than 100 Leaving Cert points. But today she's working as a business and media lecturer and is also a course coordinator at a Dublin college. So, her moral, as I said right at the start of the programme, is that life gives you options. The Leaving Cert only gives you a number. But we will hear what those numbers are very soon, as we are live from Portlaoise College today, with thanks to People First Credit Union. And if you're job hunting, if maybe you already have those points and that course, let's see if any of these tempt you. Now, still to talk about today, at least one of the teenagers involved in Sunday's crash on the M9 was in the residential care of TUSLA, not just known to the organisation, but actually in the residential care. And TD here in the Midlands now feels that TUSLA and the state therefore have questions to answer as to their responsibility in what happened on the M9 on Sunday. But apart from the blame and apart from the finger pointing, what do we need as a society to take into account about our young men and to reach them and to influence them positively before events like this escalate? Let's have that conversation next. Now, still on the agenda today, Leaving Cert's Results Day is upon us. So you can join People First Credit Union at Portlaoise College here today as we celebrate the class of 2026. And drop by to find out how you can get your share of €8,000 in scholarships. And for more details, just log on to peoplefirstcu.ie. Let's turn our minds back to last Sunday. 5 young men are dead, another family living with devastating injuries, and inevitably we're asking what needs to change. And much of that conversation has centred on Garda pursuits, whether officers have the training, the legal protection, the confidence to make the split-second decisions when a driver refuses to stop. But former Garda Graham Kavanagh believes there's another question we need to ask. And after more than 30 years in policing, he says he's seen too many young men lost through dangerous driving or drugs or violence or extreme risk-taking. What is happening with some of our young men? And are we waiting until Gardaí arrive before we try to do anything about it? Graham is now the Community Safety Officer with Winter na Tíre. Graham, good morning.
Morning, Will.
You wrote about this during the week and obviously reflected on it. So tell us your thoughts.
Yeah, okay. I suppose I'm being really careful. I'm not going to start bashing my previous organisation. Still love on Garda Síochána. But like every organisation, we have a job, or they have a job to do. And in my experience over the 30 years, the Guards seem to be the go-to for every problem in society, because there was no other services available after certain hours of the day or at weekends. We were the everything to everybody. But this issue, like what happened last Sunday, and like thoughts obviously with the family of the people that were injured, and I'm listening to a lot of the commentary about the 5 young men that were killed. You know, we're human at the end of the day. There's families there that have lost 5 young sons as well. But this is not new. And what I kind of watching all the commentary, people are focused on the number of people that were killed, 5. I don't think there's that many guards that you wouldn't talk to that have been to accidents where 3 people have been killed, 4 people have been killed, 1 person has been killed. The numbers are relevant when it comes to these situations. And kind of what concerns me is that, like, this is not the first time we've had this discussion. We had this 4 years ago when the 3 lads were killed on the N7, when they did the same thing. We've had this conversation in the 80s and 90s when joyriding was a big problem in Tala and in Clondalkin, and into the 90s. And the young general was the person that was the man in the paper, the young lad in the paper. And we reacted at that time proactively. There was a reaction, and then there was a good reaction piece. And there was people there. I mean, I read myself, I was reading the stuff online, a youth worker called Eddie Darcy, who did tremendous work. And they were kind of working in the grey areas to try and bring young men predominantly across from joyriding, I hate that word, but joyriding across into maybe trying to deviate them, probably the precursor to the youth diversion projects and that sort of stuff. And it works. And then obviously the first thing that happens when we hit recessions is all these projects get hit. And I've seen that happen to myself when I was the community policing sergeant at Tullamore. Our youth workers who do tremendous work are drastically under-resourced, can't pay them enough, and the first thing that happens when the recession kicks in is they cut funding for them projects when you probably need them the most.
And I suppose another change is the world doesn't stand still, so other influences come in, social media, for example.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't have that when I was growing up. And then the other thing, I suppose, I just lost my train of thought there for a second. I suppose, like, I've no doubt, and I'm not going to get into what happened last Sunday, but when you look at young men particularly, they don't just decide tomorrow that that's what the life I'm going to lead. That's been happening 10, 12 years before. Where are we at with trying to work with them? I was at a conference in June in Dublin where they were talking about young people being expelled or being put out of school. And in Scotland, they don't do that. They try and keep them in the school system. Now, obviously, there's a huge amount of resources and training that's needed for teachers to be able to manage the situation like that. In Ireland, I don't really think we do that. Like, they're put out of school, they're expelled. Where do they go? And inevitably, they end up in criminality.
So when you ask the question, what is happening to our young men?
Yeah.
It sounds like it's always been a question on people's lips, as you say, back in the 80s. The question probably is, how do we help them? What's the intervention? The
intervention is that we do not, and I say this across different frameworks or different things in Ireland, we are really bad at collaborating, whether it's state agencies or voluntary. We're great at working together, guards in the community, for example, but we're really bad at, like, whether we're afraid to share information about something that's going on. For example, that situation I was talking about in Clondalkin with the joyriding in the late 80s, early 90s. We didn't have data protection even. I don't think there was no legislation that come into like the late mid-90s. GDPR didn't exist. But we were knocking on doors with young people who mightn't be charged with anything, but we knew they were involved and stuff. Would you do that nowadays? A guard would probably be afraid to do that because he'd be afraid of a complaint, or to be accused of bullying or harassing somebody, you know. But ultimately what we're trying to do is get that young person away from that and try and entice them to the right side of things. And I don't think... Does that extend into other areas of policing too? I know there's been a huge amount of focus on the pursuit this week. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm being very careful. I got my driving licence in the late 80s, or the late 90s, sorry. And within a week I was given Chief's authorisation to drive a 1.6 litre patrol car with blue lights and sirens. And I was in plenty of car chases. I was rammed by stolen cars. We got prisoners. Nobody was hurt, thank God. Nobody was killed. I've seen colleagues that have been killed by stolen cars. But my point is, nothing's changed in the 30 years that I was a police officer. And yet, it's a surprise what happened last Sunday morning to everybody. And yet, anybody that's been in that sort of area, whether it's youth work or policing or anything like that, can tell you, well, this has been going on for the last 30, 40 years. And we come out with, we're changing the legislation, or we're training guards to pursue cars. Like, there's a huge risk in chasing a car. And my fear for any former colleagues that would be trained is that if you train somebody to professionally pursue a car and something goes wrong, they've actually given you a bigger stick to beat you with then, because you're deemed to be qualified to know what you're doing now, you know. The best thing that happened to me in Garda Síochána was get a standard driving course. I did a couple of weeks on the bike course, but me and motorbikes didn't mix. Right. But that opened my eyes up to the risks and to the, I suppose, roadcraft and understanding the vehicle that you're driving and who's been driving it before you. So it really kind of made you think twice about driving after cars and the risk and the red mist that can set in when you're doing that. And that's what
is there then an education piece for young men or young people generally at a certain age about road safety? Or is that just tokenistic? Are these people indifferent to the risks?
I think they're indifferent to risks. There is research out there. I was sent actually something during the week that I still need to read. It's a YouTube video as well. That at young males, I suppose, they are more inclined to get involved. Not all young males. Some young males are more inclined to get involved in risky behaviour because of their brain is still developing, and it gives them that adrenaline or that endorphin release, you know. Not all young males are like that. And like, I'm conscious of the day that's in it as well, because I believe in Cert too, all right? We're talking about a small cohort of young people nationally that are, I suppose, involved in this type of behaviour. But if my point of the whole thing is, if we know who they are. I'd be pretty sure when I look at a 5 or 6 year old, that there's probably going to be issues with that young lad or young one in another 10 years. That's when we need to start getting in there. And
what does that look like?
The behaviour. I mean, again, like everybody, I'm listening and reading the stuff online, and I saw a video on TikTok of another radio outlet where an individual that was living in the area, one of these young lads was killed, was saying that one of the young lads was involved in, I suppose, antisocial behaviour for very young age. So, like, the question is, what were we all doing as all the stakeholders and a society to try and help that young person and help that family? And I'm not giving the bleeding heart because I haven't gone soft, but I think most people that are involved in criminality want to get out at some stage.
So what sort of help is effective? Because we know no baby is born bad.
Yeah.
So at some point, as you say, there is a bad influence that can be counteracted in some way. But obviously you can't live with a child 24/7.
No.
Their parents are their primary educators, and if there are issues at home, who knows how then they deal with that.
Yeah, and I did say in the article, I don't have all the answers to that, you know. Like, I could put it this way, okay? I would say most youth workers would tell you, they're not going to work 24/7, but most would probably tell you it'd be great if we had a 24/7 youth service available to young people. That at 3 o'clock in the morning, if they decide, I'm going to involve that, I have somewhere safe to go to.
Yeah.
Not into addiction. Addiction doesn't stop at 5 o'clock on a Friday evening. Or homelessness doesn't stop, you know. So, like, that's the space we need to get into, you know. And if that means diverting billions from some other budget, from other state service, to some other agency that can actually start preventing them sort of crises later in life, well, that's what we do, you know. So, again, there's plenty of academic, there's plenty of practitioner people out there that are experiencing that are probably retired from that area. And they're the people we kind of need to be tapping into. And the other people that like, I'm a middle-aged man now, probably a pensioner now, sorry, Will. Like, what are we doing? Why aren't we talking to the young people themselves? Like, you look at all the commentary in the media over the last week that's gone since that. I haven't heard one young person spoken to or interviewed about it, you know.
And I suppose the gap is going to be filled by these people in the manosphere or other influencers who may not be preaching the healthiest of messages. So how do you reach them? As you say, with other young people, perhaps.
Yeah.
but I'm not sure they'll listen, because some of these other counter messages are very powerful.
Yeah, I mean...
And if the society, you know, it's the nature of rebelling, isn't it?
It is, and we were all young ones. Like, there's amazing work going up in the canal communities. Senator Lynn Iran and a team up there are doing work to reduce violence amongst males, predominantly. And the team that she has around her are all people with the lived experience. Like, you're not going to put any value on somebody that's lived that life and knows, and somebody will listen to. They mightn't listen to a cop that, sure, what do you know? They might listen to a man or a woman that's lived that life and has come out the other side.
So
and
we're back to good role models.
Yeah. Well, role models, and the role models don't have to be perfect. People that can actually say, well, that's the life I was going down, and this was what was ahead of me unless I change my ways, you know.
Well, perfect is impossible.
Yeah,
So-
it is. But like you and me are talking this morning, okay? And like, I've no doubt in another couple of months there'll be another fatal accident. There'll be fatal accident. Unfortunately, road safety is just, I think we, as a society, we just don't take road safety seriously as drivers. We can blame the RSA and we can blame the guards and everybody. As drivers, we don't take it that seriously. And we all see it every day on the roads. And we need to change as a society. When it comes to young males, I tell this story and I'm going to laugh at it. People think about it. I still remember back when computer games started out, and I remember when, I don't know if I can name the game,
Go on.
Grand Theft Auto came
Yes.
out. The very first one came out. And I remember it was up in my former stomping ground in West Dublin. And there was the 79 bus, I think, terminus was up at Claddagreen. And it was attacked one morning at 7 o'clock by lads with bats and sticks. They weren't robbing it. They just wrecked the
They were
bus.
acting out Grand Theft Auto.
And in my head, I said it to the lad that was with me. I says, they were probably playing Grand Theft Auto last night. And the two of us like, it was written in that, you know. And I'm wondering, is there a bit of that, you know? And I'm not, I don't know the 5 lads that were killed. I don't know anything about the 5 lads that were killed. That's their thing, whether they just get a buzz out of the driving.
But you would have dealt with young people over the years, some of whom would have been involved in criminality or dangerous activity.
Yeah.
And what would they tell you were their reasons?
The reason why they stole the car was the buzz of stealing the car and the buzz of driving it fast. And if they got a chase, that was the additional buzz. That was it. That was their addiction. No different to somebody being addicted to heroin or cocaine or pornography or whatever. That was their addiction.
Well, in a way, then there is a link with the games, because the games create that buzz, that dopamine hit. This is obviously a far more extreme version of it.
It is, yeah. And that, like, I mean, you know, we've had them conversations in interview rooms. Why would you steal it? Like, you know, just the buzz. Like, you know, sometimes they were stealing the cars to commit criminal activity. It would go on and do ram raids, we call them at the time, robbing petrol stations down in rural Ireland. And they drive out the M4 and the lights would go off to try and lose you. Now, they were generally, at the time, the cars they were stealing were 5 Series Beamers or T5s. You know, that was the car of choice at the time. Fast, no guarded car was going to keep up with them. And they'd go down the M4 at the M7 and do a few burglaries, and they'd come back at 6 in the morning. And our job was to wait then and try and catch them as they came back. And we had successes doing that, but again,
Was it almost like a game to them?
to them, yeah, it was, yeah, cat and mouse. And
did you ever follow up? Did they reform any of them after they were caught?
not really. A lot of them were either killed, overdosed, got into addiction, or got caught for other criminal activity, went on to further serious criminal activity. I'm sure there's plenty, and I don't know that. But
But to your earlier point,
yeah, look, I do
the
know.
sooner you can intervene, the better.
Yeah, I do know 1 or 2 people that I know well at this stage that were involved in serious criminal activity or serious addiction that have completely turned their lives around. And I count them as friends, you know.
I'm
so
sure
it
you
does
know
happen.
many more who are in graves.
Yeah, unfortunately, yeah. And I've been that guard too that have called to the house to break the bad news, and I've gone to the wakes and the funerals. And
Does that stay with you?
that bit doesn't, but like, I did say it in another article I wrote, like, I still see my very first fatal accident, you know. And I'm conscious, like, you know, the families will be listening as well, but you do see that, like, any emergency worker sees that, you know. And there is counselling available now where it wasn't in the, like, when I think about it, I joined the Guards in the early 90s, you know. there was no such thing as that, and the solution to that was going for a drink.
Yeah.
That was and talking about it, you know. So yeah, you do see things like that, you know, but you don't. You just get on with things, you know.
I take a lot from our conversation. In a way, none of these problems are new. The catalyst for them may change, whether it's social media amplifying it these days, but back in the 80s there was something else.
Yeah.
The solution is still the same. It's helping young people as soon as possible.
Get in there, and how we do that, I mean, that's going to take a cross-government departmental approach. Like, I really have confidence in the new Garda Commissioner that you have somebody there that's come from the ground or understands communities, you know, and if anybody's going to be able to do that, it's himself. It's just getting the right people to work with at a high level to bring the right people around the table is the solution.
Graham, appreciate your time today.
Thanks,
you.
Will.
Former Garda Sergeant Graham Kavanagh. 12 minutes to 10. So it is Leaving Cert Day right across the Midlands, and, well, for some, the morning has been a quiet affair. They'll be relaxed and get up and check when they're inclined to, and for others it's been a crack of dawn job. The results are available from 10 o'clock. The next big moment after that coming on Wednesday, when the first round of the CSO is published. Noel Daly is principal of Portlaoise College, where we're broadcasting today with the kind support of People First Credit Union. Good morning.
Morning, Will. And first of all, just to say thank you for pitching up at Portlaoise College. We're delighted to have you broadcasting from here.
Well, it's
fantastic.
A wonderful school.
Yeah.
Amazing building. Yeah. And I only wish something like this was around in my day. But
thank
anyway,
you.
Tell us about the class of 2026.
Yes, they're a fantastic class. We had 165 doing the mainstream Leaving Cert and 15 doing LCA, so we have 180 in total. And I suppose it's interesting, when we're looking back, they were the class that started, some of the ones that did transition year were the class that started wearing masks, so it was an interesting time for them. They started in first year, so we've forgotten all about that, you know. And even the ones that didn't do transition would have been in sixth class, and they would have missed some of that. So I suppose these are the sort of last few that would have been sort of severely affected by COVID. But yeah, I suppose here in Portlaoise College we're constantly trying to look at the students to get a overall rounded student, you know, you're looking at, because I mean things are changing, and we know we're always focused on the points and the Leaving Cert results and getting the high results, but I mean we are looking at students now where the world is changing. It's not all about information, it is about having students with empathy, communication skills like in your own profession, the ability to build relationships and problem solvers. So they're the sort of people you're looking at, you know. So here in the school, as you look around, thanks Will for mentioning the facilities, but you are trying to cater for all students, and as they go along through the school you're trying to make sure that you're creating that fully developed, you know.
Well, the point system will only capture so much. It's just a number at the end of the day.
It is. It's very difficult to...
Life will create options after that.
Yeah.
So how do you prepare students for, some are going to be very pleased, others less so? What's your message to them?
Well, my message to them is that today there's an awful lot of focus on getting the X amount of points. But when they reflect over the next couple of days, it's not like it was 20 or 30 years ago. There are loads of options. There's massive amount of pathways. And we see that as well, with students taking some time out going to further education and then doing a tertiary course or something like that, and then building up, going down the apprenticeship route, or maybe taking an alternative route into their career. Because a lot of students now will go on and do postgrads and after that, you know. So it's important that they don't overall focus on just what's happening today, because they may be disappointed today, but when they look back in 5, 6, 7 years' time, even in a couple of weeks, but even, as you know, we do job interviews, and I'm interviewing teachers all the time, no one ever asks at an interview,
no,
what did you get in your Leaving Cert? No one ever asks. We never ask that. So when they move on, you know, and they get into their career, they look at things very, very differently, you know. So just to be not overly disappointed, and that's what I say, because there are options for everyone there.
We haven't seen individual results yet. The national picture suggests there will be fewer H1s. And there's always this focus on the upper part of the points threshold. But do you concern yourself much with, well, how many 625 students did we have in the school?
No, it's nice for an individual student if they're aiming for that to get to 625. But I suppose if we go back and look at, and I suppose the media pushes that narrative as well a lot of the time about the 625. But if we go back and look at the CAO system, anyone in the range of 400 to 500 will probably get 90% of the courses or 85% of the courses that are out there. We're also noticing the demographics as well. the shift away, and we see it in Portlaoise here ourselves, the shift away from the eastern side of the country. So there is a bit of a pushback. So if you're looking at the colleges in Dublin, because of supply and demand, the points may be inflated, where a child or a student will get the similar course, maybe in Limerick, Galway, Carlow, Athlone, maybe at much lower points. So I suppose...
And then another dimension, lower costs
Lower
too.
costs, yeah. Well, the accommodation is causing that. And even from visiting the colleges up there last year, they know that too, you know, and they're trying to fight back a little bit. But that is causing a bit of an issue. But it is better. It's better for the students because they have more choice when they move off the outside of Dublin. They do have more choice because the pints come down a bit, you know.
So for the next few days, there's a bit of a pause, and then the CAO comes out. So what's the advice you would give ahead of that, given that, again, some will be very pleased and others not so much?
Yeah, well, we have in our own school here, we have up to 4 career guidance teachers, so we have a big career guidance department, and we would be always encouraging them to keep all their options open, especially when they're filling in the CO form. So anyone that is disappointed or maybe unsure when to get an offer, I would ask them to contact, in our case anyway, contact our career guidance department and look at what options they have, you know. And maybe it may suit some students to, if they're very, very disappointed, they may suit them to defer a year and do an interim course, you know, or maybe look at what their second or third options are. And when they get their second or third options, and if they're unsure about that, they can look at those options and see what pathways those options provide for going into their final, ultimate, what they're looking to achieve in life, yeah.
Do you remember your leaving cert?
Oh, I do, and I was just reflecting on it a little bit. And it's just interesting, well, my own journey, I won't say what year it was, but I repeated the leaving. I did not get my course, and I ended up I went down to Carlow or IT at the time, and then I reapplied to Limerick, and ultimately on the third time. So I know how students are feeling, and I suppose it's easy for us to talk because as school principal, you're in the business of giving out results, and you're in that. But for the student, this is their first time. And it is difficult, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And for many students, they may not know until Wednesday where they're going to be the middle of September. It all happens quite quickly. So it is an uncertain time. So just for parents out there and for anyone who's working with young people, just to reassure them, you know, it does all work out and just need a little bit of time and just to reassure them that way, I would say.
Well, I can see students starting to file in here.
Yes, they're starting to come now.
And I think you've put on a little bit of catering and so on for them.
Yes, it is. So thanks to yourselves and to the Credit Union for supporting us here today. And I'm delighted that you'll get a chance to have a look around, because I did speak to you earlier in the year about our fundraiser, about our bus fundraiser that we're raising money for the bus. So, and as you can see now at the school, it's nice that you're ready to visit. Thanks.
Super. Noel, pleasure, and best of luck to all of the students here in Portlaoise today. News at 10 is next. Good morning, Midlands 103, live from Portlaoise College today, with thanks to People First Credit Union, celebrating the class of 2026. And if you want to find out how you can get your share of €8,000 in scholarships, plus information on student loans, well, peoplefirstcu.ie, or just keep listening. We'll have those details very soon. Now, still to come today, 12 years of school comes down to one screen, and we are with those leaving cert students as the results land. Water coolers, €10 million to be spent on public sector water coolers. Is that sensible, or has the government lost the run of itself? That's one of the topics for the Friday panel in just over an hour's time. So when you call, 0818 300 103 is my number. You can text or WhatsApp 083 30 10 103, powered by Lamb Brothers Toyota in Tullamore. There are questions you can ask after a tragedy, and there are conclusions you have to be very careful about reaching. 5 teenage boys died on the M9 last Sunday after the car they were travelling in was driven the wrong way along a motorway. And we've subsequently learned something else. One of those teenagers was in the care of the state. 2 others were known to TUSLA, and their deaths have now been referred to the National Review Panel. Aontú leader Peadar Tóibín says this raises profound questions about how Ireland looks after some of its most vulnerable children. But he's gone even further. He argues the state itself bears some responsibility for what happened. Peadar Tóibín, good morning.
Good morning to you.
So, on what basis do you say the state can bear responsibility here?
Well, first of all, this collision shocked the country to the core. And there's no doubt that, people could not believe that a car full of boys would be so callous and reckless as to put the lives of innocent people in danger. And the first responsibility is on the individuals driving that car. But many people at the time mentioned also that there should be parental responsibility. Did the parents not know where these boys were? Is there nobody keeping an eye on these boys? Now, as it turns out, and information that we in Aintree received earlier this week shows that actually that the state was responsible for at least one of those boys, and that boy was in state care. So the state was in loco parentis, in other words, in the place of the parent. And I believe that means the state was in part responsible for making sure that that child was under supervision and was prevented from doing what he did. We've done lots of work on this over the last 7 years, and to be honest, I am deeply frustrated by the fact that the government is simply not listening. Parliamentary questions that we in Aintree have received have shown that there's well over 230 children now who have died in state care or known to the state in the last 12 years. Some of those children have been murdered, some have died of suicide, some have died of drug overdoses, and many have died in very, very serious and violent accidents. And the reason that's happening, now don't get me wrong, minding children who are in state care is difficult. It's not easy. These are some of the these are children coming from some of the most difficult backgrounds known. But we know that the state has been using what's called special emergency accommodation. That's accommodation, residential, that's not regulated, where the staff are not vetted, where sometimes it's just an apartment in an apartment block or a room in a hotel room. And we know that children are going missing regularly from these special emergency arrangements. Right now, there are dozens of children missing from state care. Right now. And we know that some of these
and
children
just for context,
are being...
what circumstances might a child come from to end up in there?
So obviously, first of all, TUSLA get about 100,000 referrals on an annual basis. So, and it's incredible. Again, most people wouldn't know this. There's been a massive spike in the number of children being referred to TUSLA in the last number of years. It's gone from about 50,000 to about 110,000 just in the space of 5 years. Now, many of those children are dealt with in their family situation, etc. And some of the children who have real difficulties are then put into foster care. And foster care is a really good way to make sure the children are given the support that they need. But there are a section of children who have come from such difficult situations, or they themselves are very, very difficult children and very, in a very, very, difficult space, that they need to be put into residential care. And there is proper residential care that's regulated, that's funded properly, etc., but there's not enough. So, for example, just at the end of last month, in July, the High Court held TUSLA in contempt of court for not finding residential places for 3 children. There are currently 250 children in this state in a queue, in a waiting list to get into residential care. And as a result, some of these children are being groomed by gangs for sexual assault. Some of these children are being groomed by gangs for the dealing of drugs. And many of them are getting into situations that are really abhorrent. Like one child went missing from TUSLA, ended up a year later in a brothel. And so we know that there is serious crisis happening to these children on a regular basis. And sadly...
So bringing that back to last Sunday, we know only so much, and there's much that we have yet to learn. So we know that one of the children was in residential care. The others were known to TUSLA. But what does that term mean?
Known to TUSLA basically means that the individual was either referred to TUSLA at one stage, or that TUSLA were engaged with that child, or that child was in residential care or in foster care at some stage. So in other words, that child was in the TUSLA system at one stage. So it's deeply frustrating because, I believe if these children were from leafy suburbs in South Dublin, this would be a national crisis and the whole system would be resolving it. But many of these children are from the most disadvantaged areas, most disadvantaged families in the country with no voices of their own. But the problem is that
let's just test that a little bit. If staff were to be aware that a 16 or a 17-year-old didn't want to remain in their residential centre, they can't physically prevent them walking out, can they?
And this is a problem. And you're dead right. This goes down to the heart of it. There is a rule within TUSLA that they cannot physically prevent a teenager leaving their accommodation. I believe that's absolutely wrong, and it needs to be revisited. Anybody who's a parent will say, obviously, you never want to forcibly ground a child. You always want to be able to reason with that child and bring that child around to see sense. But there are times, especially in teenage years, where parents, for the safety of the child and maybe the safety of others, have to prevent the child leaving their home. And TUSLA cannot do that. So on a regular basis, a child, a teenager, are leaving their homes, and there's nothing that TUSLA can currently do about it. That's the rules under which they work at the moment.
So we need to boil this down then into specifically what changes you're arguing for. What I've heard so far, more residential places, that rule around physically containing them. What else? Because I'm sure there's an accountability piece here as well, that if, and you gave that example of the poor child who ended up in a brothel after a year, is there an investigation, and are there learnings, and is there a compulsion to put those learnings into practice?
So the first thing is we have to start asking ourselves, why are so many children being raised in such a manner in which they are getting into really desperate and difficult situations? So we have to, as a state, see how we can actually strengthen families, how we can support families, how we can make sure that mothers and fathers are given the necessary skills to be able to raise their children, that mothers and fathers, if possible, are more likely to be able to work as partners in raising their children. So that we don't have this situation where children are being referred into care. Secondly, we do need to fund the care system, and the care system is not being funded. Now, the problem is, people might say, well, that's going to cost more money. The problem is, when you get into an emergency situation, those emergency care costs are massive. Like, they're hundreds of thousands of euros a year, nearly per child. So they're a massive cost. So ideally what you want to do is to have a proper residential system whereby it is funded in a stable manner in which there are locations for these children to go to. Secondly, then, we need to make sure that the Gardaí, are doing their job in terms of being able to pursue people in this type of situation that happened on the M9. It is absolutely shocking. Again, something that we've been calling for years. For the Gardaí to have the necessary skills, the necessary training, and the necessary protections to be able to pursue individuals on e-scooters, on scramblers and joyriders, so that they can protect them and other people using our roads in this country. Those steps are necessary if we want to get to the heart of this problem.
Finally, if the National Review panel eventually concludes that TUSLA followed its procedures and did everything that was reasonably available to it in this particular case, will you accept the state was not responsible in any way for what happened on the M9?
So the use of special emergency arrangements, the use of non-vetted staff, and the use of unregulated companies is not acceptable no matter what. And I think that's pretty much accepted even by TUSLA. They've said they're going to bring these SEAs to an end. However, we know that they're not brought to an end as of yet. It is never acceptable that a child goes missing from a state agency. Remember that the state has taken some of these children from some of the most difficult scenarios you can imagine. And now we know those children are being put by the state in some of the most difficult circumstances than you can imagine. The state is actually intervening and making it worse in many cases for these children. Kyron Dernan was the name of a young boy that died known to TUSLA care. We had a young individual who was murdered in a youth residential setting in the last year. There's a long list of children now who are losing their lives as a result of the fact that the government are not doing the job. And this is key because everybody's pointing their fingers to TUSLA. The Minister for Children is the final authority and the final responsibility for how this it operates. And the Minister for Children cannot hide behind TUSLA anymore in terms of this. She needs to be made accountable in relation to what's happening to children in this country.
Padder Tobin of Aintree, appreciate the call today. Thank you.
Gurmila Margaret.
Deputy Tobin is also a TD in Meath West. It's 22 minutes past 10. Yes, indeed. And People First Credit Union are giving out €8,000 in scholarships, in bursaries. And it's going to be an amazing experience to have that weight of financial pressure taken off your shoulders. So let's see what we have here at Portlaoise College. Hopefully a whole lot of happy students. Certainly I've heard the cheers. We have a number of gentlemen coming into the outside broadcast unit here looking reasonably pleased and content. So you've got your results in front of you. What's your name, by the way?
Noel.
Where are you from, Noel?
Portlaoise.
So what does it say? Does it give us what we want?
Yeah, I'm delighted with it.
And what time did you wake up at today?
8, I think. Around 8 in the morning, yeah.
And you slept okay last night?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
So what's the plan? You look pleased. CAO obviously next Wednesday. What would be your first choice?
I'm hoping to do geography in Limerick. Do an arts course there, yeah. If not, I was looking at construction in TUD.
Okay, and then eventually going on to some sort of engineering construction role.
Yeah.
So what subjects did you choose?
I chose geography, ag science, construction and computer science.
So really tying in then with what you want to do
Yeah.
onward. And then what's your name?
Damien.
So Damien, good news, bad news, you look happy.
Yeah, I'm happy enough. I'm fairly pleased. Yeah.
Are you going to give anything away?
A little bit. No, I'm really pleased now. I thought I wouldn't do as good as I did. After the exam, I was like kind of second guessing myself. Then the results came out this morning and I was over the moon. And yeah, I'm just really pleased, really happy.
So did you, like your friend here, did you get up 8 o'clock casual, or were you biting the nails
I was
all
biting
through
the
night?
nails all night till about 4 o'clock. I finally got some sleep then, and then woke up at 8 and I was just kind of waiting around. I think it was the longest wait I ever had. Yeah.
But it paid off.
It really did. It really paid off, yeah.
So then next Wednesday, CAO, all going well, where are you off to?
Hoping to go to Carlow to do quantity surveying. Yeah.
Okay. So again, connected with the construction industry. And do you have family who are in that field?
Not really. I just took a really good liking to it, and I did my whole did a whole research into it and made sure I really liked it before I put it on my CEO. So yeah, quite interesting.
So research going through prospectus, looking at college, or looking at the industry itself?
Looked at the colleges, what the college had to offer, and then I normally look at maybe videos on YouTube with quantity surveyors just to make sure I got full insight and see all different aspects.
So would both of you have had the same sort of background in that you didn't have connections with construction?
Yeah.
And would there be many in your class looking at construction? Because in my time it was, some people did, but computer studies and programming, and that was the big, now this is a long time ago, lads, but that was the big fad at the time.
Yeah, there's quite a few people who are looking in architecture or stuff like that. Engineering, so that kind of aspect. But I don't know, it's something that I wanted to do for a long time. So.
Yeah, good. So what's the plan to celebrate? You have to make sure now that this success is rejoiced and you get your reward later.
Probably be out in the town tonight.
Yeah,
that's definitely the plan since last year. So, yeah.
Will there be many of you out?
I'd say so, yeah.
Or where will you go?
Where not?
Yeah, wherever.
Okay, wherever it takes
Yeah.
you. Well, congratulations.
Thank
Lovely
you.
to meet you, and great to see there are so many others here who are very happy as well. Is everybody in good form?
Yeah,
Say so,
far.
yeah.
All right. Well, they have coffee over there. Stick with the coffees for now. You can get something stronger later. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now, it's coming up on 10:30 and still to come today, paying for all of this. So it's one thing to get the offer at TUD or in Carlow or wherever you aspire to go, but those bills have to be paid. the accommodation has to be found. And yes, there are grants, but a lot of it has to come out of the bank of mum and dad. But with thanks to People First Credit Union, things can be made a little bit easier. And we'll tell you how very, very soon. Now to your comments on 083 30 10 103. And the subject, I suppose, the only subject that's been on anybody's lips since the early hours of last Sunday morning was just how do we connect with young men, and indeed young women to a certain extent, who fall into criminality, bad influence, and who have gone out on the roads and put other lives, not just their own lives, but other lives at risk. And one listener says, as far as I can see, the Gardaí cannot do right for doing wrong. And they are damned if they do, and they are damned if they don't. I think they should pursue criminals, but if they do and they're not trained, then they are liable. And we need to change that particular system. Maureen in Mount Mellick says, I was listening to you talking about how to manage young men. Well, what about the responsibility of parents? Society seems to be accepting a lot of the blame for this. Another listener says, what children and teenagers also need would be third spaces that don't require them to spend money, whether that's public parks or libraries or youth centres, you name it. A diminishing of public spaces always comes before the fall of civilization. And one other person says, please, please stop flashing your lights when there is a checkpoint or speed van ahead, because it's not helping anybody and in fact could lead to a disaster. It warns generally law-abiding motorists, yes, but it also warns gangs of thieves that the Gardaí are looking out for. So we need to not do that, says a listener on 083 30 10 103. That's also the number if you want to wish a student all the best as they open up their exam results. Will, good morning. My daughter Tiffany is getting her Leaving Cert results today. And lots of love from Mammy, Daddy, sisters and brothers. And if there's somebody you want to congratulate, well, get in touch and let me know who they are, where they are and how they are doing. It's just after 10:30. Let's see what's happening in your area over the weekend and indeed in the week ahead. Next. Oh, they're in very good form here at Portlaoise College. Looks like there are many, many happy people and the celebrations are already being planned. Plenty of coffee being dished out as well. And you can meet the great people from People First Credit Union. And even if you are unsuccessful in drawing down the €8,000 that they are making available to support students, there are also low-cost loans available to help with those college bills. But let's talk about a different credit union here in the Midlands, first of all. North Midlands has been an amalgamation of many, even large enough credit unions in their own right. But as has been the case over recent years, when Ireland once had 172 individual credit unions, through mergers and other agreements, that number has fallen. And so North Midlands Credit Union was going to merge with Roscommon in what would have created an entity of €600 million in assets. But it's not happening. Charlie Weston has the story. He's in the Irish Independent with that headline this morning. Hey, Charlie.
Good morning, Will.
86,000 members, if this had gone ahead, must have been one of the largest potential credit unions in the country.
It would have made it the largest community credit union. You know, I mean, there are bigger industrial ones, you know, the likes of the big ESB one, Savvy, are very big. The teacher ones are very big. But the community ones, this would have been the biggest. It would have been what I suppose we're calling in the headline a super credit union. It would have had 86,000 members, as you say, 600 million in assets. So it would have been quite a big credit union. But the plan is on hold for now because it was rejected by the people that turned up at a special general meeting during this week. The members of North Midlands Credit Union, Mullingar based, decided no, we don't want this. We're not having it. So it didn't reach the threshold. That the people who attended the meeting, 75% of them were required to approve this. there's quite strict rules put in place by the central bank when one credit union is merging with another. Essentially, it's a takeover, I suppose, really. But the members who turned up at that meeting weren't wearing it, not enough of them anyway. So the 75% threshold to approve the merger was not reached. Now, Roscommon...
And do we know if it was a tight vote or was it rejected resoundingly?
I think it was pretty tight. They were just short of that 75% threshold. So I think they'll probably go at it again, but some work needs to be done to convince people that this is a good idea. Despite
the reception was warmer in Roscommon.
Roscommon, they overwhelmingly approved of it. I think way up in the 90s on that one. They see it as a good move. It's a small credit union, 16,000 members. It's got it's got offices around Strokestown and places like that, and Roscommon Town. And they thought this would be a good idea to have a tie-up with the larger North Midlands Credit Union, but the members, for now anyway, of North Midlands Credit Union who turned up at that meeting, not enough of them said it was a good idea.
And do we know what their concerns might have been, Charlie?
I don't know exactly. I mean, I've been told various things which I can't, without having been at that meeting, I actually don't know. But generally just concerns about the running of the credit union. There's a lot of staff. I think the staff have a vote as well. There's something like 90 staff. A lot of them turned up at the AGM, and there is some discontent among the staff about various things. So, I think there's a job of work here to be done with the board of directors of North Midlands to kind of get people on side and seek out what the problems are if they want to revive this and do it again, because, credit unions have decided that it'd be better to build a bit of scale, and that it's hard for small credit unions to survive in particular, so they're eager to kind of join up with bigger ones because there's a lot of regulatory costs, there's a lot of marketing costs, and if you can pool those costs by being part of a bigger operation, it makes sense, particularly as credit unions now are getting quite big in mortgages. They passed the €1 billion mark recently in terms of the mortgages issued by credit unions. You also have credit unions been quite successful in farmer loans, the cultivate loan, and small business lending as well. But to do all that, you require heavy training and there's regulatory functions and regulatory compliance issues. So it sometimes makes it easier if you're part of a larger group. But there are some issues to be ironed out, it seems to me. And what I'm being told is not everybody's happy was happy with the idea of the merger, or else they were trying to send a message to the people who run the credit union. So look, I'm told it's not dead. They'll look at it again, but in the meantime, yes, there's obviously issues to be tackled.
And is it unusual for a merger vote to fail? Can there ever, for instance, be concern about scale and credit union becoming too large and losing perhaps some of its community ethos?
That's exactly it, yeah. You often hear complaints from people about credit unions turning into corporates, is the way people would put it. Concerns that there's an ethos of there being a small local lender owned by its members and being attuned to the community. But in the most cases, those kind of voices tend to be voted down because others think, it's a good idea to build a bit of scale here. If we're going to compete properly in financial services, which has become very sophisticated, it's heavily regulated. Central bank, you speak to anybody who's involved in a credit union and they'll tell you that the central bank demands and regulatory demands are very heavy. So it makes sense to merge. So it's unusual. It is highly unusual for these kind of mergers to be turned down. We've seen loads of different mergers. There was well over 300 credit unions. If you go back 20 years, that's down to about 170 now because there's been a spate of mergers and essentially coming together. Also, they're rebranding. They come up with different names now. All the Saints names are being dropped gradually, and they're coming up with different kinds of names. So it's a phenomenon that's happened quite a bit, but it is unusual, as you say. It is unusual for these deals to be turned down. But generally, just passed. Enough people will vote them over the line to get them passed.
Well, we'll watch that space, see what happens. And indeed, I'm sure there are many members of North Midlands Credit Union listening who may be able to shed some light on why they individually perhaps voted against this. Charlie, thank you.
Cheers, Will. Thanks.
You can read more in the Irish Independent from the pen of Charlie Weston, the personal finance editor. 083 30 10 103, powered by Lamb Brothers Toyota in Tullamore. That's how you reach me on text or WhatsApp. A listener says, Will, I always understood that a child at around 7 years of age came to use reason, and when they were 18, then they would be legally responsible. No child, as far as I'm concerned anyway, seems to be disciplined, and they are getting away with less and less, and there are fewer traditional family units. Another listener disagrees that you are a child at 16 or 18. Put them to work or to jail for misbehaviour. There are different degrees of legal responsibility, and as you age, obviously those responsibilities increase. When you are 18, you are criminally responsible. But under 18, you are regarded as a minor in the eyes of the law, at least. Mick in Offaly says, the Gardaí have no power over these kids, and it's time parents would be charged instead, because they are supposed to have control. Well, again, sometimes that is easier said than done. You can have a perfectly obedient child up to a certain point. Then, particularly around the teenage years, when their friends become more influential than their family, they can change. And you can have a lot of just bad luck sometimes by the company they keep. Or maybe that's a naive view. I'm happy to be challenged. So do pick up that phone and tell me what you think. It's 11:15. We're here at Portlaoise College, and there are so many people coming in for the exam results now. They're picking up the coffee and the crepes, and they're all looking very, very happy. There were no coffee or crepes in my day. Carol Murphy is here. She's marketing manager with People First Credit Union. Did you get the royal treatment as well in your day?
I'm giving the royal treatment today, but no, there was no royal treatment back in my day. I think it was all inside, and I probably stood beside all the students who were 600-point students as I opened up my results.
Yeah. Or it's 6:25 now.
Yeah, absolutely. No, but a very different treatment here today, and it's just such a nice day to be here to do something nice for the students and for the parents. We can't forget about the parents. They're sometimes the ones that you feel most sorry for as they come in, and they're sometimes afraid to what to say and how to look. And
because you have to be their counsellor and psychotherapist, and then their bank manager and their taxi driver and their pharmacist the next day when they're feeling the headaches and so on. So, what are you doing here? What's happening this morning?
So, this morning, it's a really good morning to be here, I suppose, at Portlaoise College, and we're down just to see the happy faces for the Leaving Cert results today. We've brought a crepe van to give everybody a few treats, so if you haven't come down already, come on down to us. But today, I suppose, really is about celebrating what they have achieved, and for us as a credit union to stand with them and beside them and just celebrate that they've come to this milestone today, and we're just here to celebrate them, basically.
So you deal with parents and students every single year coming around to Leaving Cert time. So what are you seeing?
It's something that we've noticed, I suppose, the last couple of years is around Leaving Cert time. It's parents coming into us who are genuinely stressed and sometimes very emotional. They suddenly, I suppose, there's a college place sitting on the table, and they all of a sudden need an accommodation deposit, registration fees, laptops. So it's money, money, money. It's a never-ending cycle of money, and sometimes prepared for that, I suppose. And when we talk to them, they have never had the conversation between the parent and the student about where this money is going to come. So they've taught about school and preparing for the exams, but not essentially had the conversation about how are we going to supply this and where is the money going to come from. We, I suppose, also have to recognise the reality for families at the moment that with the cost of living, the rising household expenses, and I suppose all the uncertainty that we're seeing internationally in the world, that things have changed and people have less disposable income. And for many parents, I suppose, it's not that they didn't want to save to college, but they haven't had much left over every month to put that money aside. And the good news, I suppose, if there's a shortfall, that's where you can come and talk to your local credit union, and that's where People First Credit Union come, is that we can bring you in, sit you down, talk about your budgeting, talk about your finances, and make a plan that's suitable for you, whether it's you need €500, whether you need a long-term more, €5,000. It depends on, each family is going to be different, and every situation is going to be different, and that's where we come in, I suppose.
Well, if you are that parent who has been so focused on the exams until now and the CAO, and you're a deer in the headlights on the finances, what's some good advice?
Some good advice, I suppose, is to have a conversation early. Sit down and talk to each other and plan out where you want to go. And for parents that are listening today, I suppose, and this is all facing them next year, now is the time. It's never too early to plan. This is what's going to happen next year. And even if they don't have a CEO in mind or a college course in mind, sit down and plan about, how are we going to finance accommodation deposit? It comes around so quickly before you know it. We've worked with Leaving Cert guidance counsellors, and they would always say February or March time. Leaving Cert guidance, Donegal Mahoney is a great page to follow for anybody who hasn't followed, and we'd always recommend people to follow him. But if you don't have everything figured out, there's always a way, there's always a plan. Come and talk to the local credit union, and come and talk to us now to plan ahead for next year.
And what does that conversation sound like? What can you offer?
Lots of different things, I suppose. The scholarship is the main one that we're running, and this is something new and exciting that we have brought this year. We have opened it up to students across, not only in our common bond, but outside of our common bond as well. So we have €7,000 in scholarship awards last year, and this year we've added on an extra €1,000 in scholarship awards. So what that means is, for every school in our common bond area, we have €1,000 to give away to one Leaving Cert student that's hoping to go to college next year, or this coming year, I should say. So any students that are here with us today can go onto our website, peoplefirstcu.ie, and apply for our scholarship award. The new scholarship award we have added on this year is an extra €1,000, and that's for students that maybe deferred their place or were in a PLC course just this past year and are now planning to go to college in September. They can go onto our website, and it's literally be a member. We pull the name out of a hat once you fill in your details, and we do that at our AGM every year, and it's a relief for so many people when we speak to students that have won this money beforehand. It can mean paying for a car to get up and down to college every day. It can mean a laptop to go to college. So it really helps so many.
Or just a little bit of breathing room.
Absolutely, yeah, a little bit of space, yeah, is great.
You mentioned the term common bond. So
yes.
You cover what area?
We cover, so we started off, when I came to the credit union 11 years ago, I was brought in to change Portlaoise Credit Union to People First Credit Union, and that was just Portlaoise. And we then merged with Abbeyleix Credit Union, and now we have Portlaoise, Abbeyleix, Stradbally and Athy. So we have 4 offices. So anybody from any of those common bond areas from Abbeyleix, Portlaoise, Stradbally or Athy can apply for our student loan. You can be either a member or you can be working in the area to apply for a student loan.
And what sort of rate does the student loan offer?
The student loan is, sometimes people come and they take it for 1 year, sometimes they take it for 3 years at 6.5%. And it all depends on everybody's individual circumstances. So sometimes people are looking for, as you said, a big loan. Sometimes people are just looking for a car maybe to get them up and down to college because they can't find accommodation or they can't secure a place for accommodation.
So it's quite customisable. It's not
Absolutely.
one size fits all.
Totally, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You've heard some cheers in the background as you've been talking. What's your final message to students?
Just enjoy the day. People have worked for so long, for so many years, from when they were little tiny babies going to school and second year going to school. Enjoy today. No matter what the message, no matter what the outcome of today is, there's always a place for everybody. There's always success for everybody, and people find success in different areas. So just enjoy the moment and live in the moment.
But did you, on your Leaving Cert day, expect to be doing what you're doing now?
No, never, never. I think, and I say this to so many people, you don't always know, and people don't always know, and it's okay to not always know what there is. I'm a firm believer in what's for you won't pass you by. When I left secondary school in Mountmellick Community School, I had business studies on my CEO, and generally because I really had no firm idea of what I wanted to do. My mother would say I'm a good woman to talk, so I started in business studies, and I went then into 3rd year and I specialised in marketing, and then I went into 4th year and I specialised in services marketing, and that's where I ended up. I did my thesis actually with in hospitality. They offered me a job after it. And, you know, you'll find your way along the way. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And I suppose I found the career that I'm in now from just really trial and error. And you find passion and you find something that you love. It doesn't always have to be around your points. It doesn't always have to be around what somebody else is telling you to do. I think find something that you're passionate in, and sometimes that just might take a little while.
Well, I was terrified of microphones. And,
and now you're talking to one every day.
Yeah, mumbled all the time. I wanted to be a cameraman. So here we are.
And now you find yourself the other side of it.
Exactly. Carol, lovely to chat with you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Carol Murphy is the marketing manager at People First Credit Union. The news at 11 is next. Good morning. Now, still to talk about today, the Friday panel brings you through all of the major stories of the last 7 days, including those €10 million public sector water coolers. The man who got soaked cutting the grass and then complained to Met Éireann about the forecast. And, well, a lot more besides. So, when you call 0818 300 103 is my number. Text or WhatsApp 083 30 10 103, powered by Lamb Brothers Toyota in Tullamore. We are live from Portlaoise College, and the crowd of students is starting to build up, and thankfully it looks like everybody's reasonably happy. Lots of cheers and lots of smiles, and that's what we want to see. And thanks again to peoplefirstcreditunion.ie or peoplefirstcu.ie for hosting us. Now, there are taxes designed to change your behaviour, and then there are times when you can't simply afford to change it. If you live in the rural Midlands, you may need the diesel car because there's no bus outside your door. You may fill the oil tank because there's no gas line running past your house, and you haven't got 20 or 30,000 euros sitting in a bank account to transform your heating system. But this autumn, you could be hit twice. The government is already facing a decision on restoring fuel excise in September, and then in October, the postponed carbon tax increase on home heating fuels is due to arrive alongside the next scheduled increase. And all of that against an energy market still being shaken by war. Tony McCormick is the Fianna Fáil TD for Offaly. Deputy McCormick, good morning.
Good morning, Will, and good morning to our listeners. And I suppose, first of all, I'd like to wish all the Leaving Cert students who are getting their results this morning the best of luck, and to remember that your results today don't define it. There are so many pathways that you can take to get to wherever you want. So I wish them the best of luck and as they receive the results this morning.
Well, hear. So, very simply, should either of those October carbon tax increases go ahead?
Well, look, I suppose the government has taken a stance on this from the very, very outset of the start of the war in the Middle East. And it was to monitor the situation closely. Like, we've never been seen wanting. When we realised what the situation was, we reduced, first of all, the price of diesel and petrol. And then we came back with a second round of support. And they were brought the price of diesel and petrol, the price of diesel down by 32 cents. The price of petrol came down by 27 cents. And we also put supports in place for the agri-food contractors and for the hauliers. Now, what this allowed, or what this did, was that it cut off the possibility of inflation at base, and it has worked really, really well. Now, we always said we were going to be very fluid on it and keep looking at it constantly, because it is a situation that is constantly changing. And the situation at the moment is not where we were when the extension was granted back in July. So the extension was granted up to September because at that stage the war looked like it was at a stage where it was kind of levelling off. There was a peace kind of agreement between the United States and Iran. But that now has all changed, and the whole price of oil has fluctuated. And in this situation, there's nothing off the table. If the Dáil needs to be recalled next week to extend those supports, well, then it has my 100% support. That's a job.
And on the matter of the carbon tax increases?
The carbon tax increase, again, nothing is off the table. This is something that will have to be discussed. The carbon taxes are something that will come up in the budget. The budget is now 50 days away. And we're looking at, we want to make this budget all about the working families and people that are out there that need support. We realise that the cost of living has been tough for people. The prices of everyday goods in supermarkets and right across any retail have gone up. we need to be able to look after our workers and make sure
Yes.
that they put more money back into their pockets.
I'm asking, and I know you're not the Minister for Finance, but when you're asked for your opinion at a parliamentary party meeting, do you think either of those carbon tax increases should go ahead?
Look, as I said, Will, the carbon tax, we stopped the carbon tax originally as a result of the price increases. That is something that we, as a parliamentary party, we will have discussions on. There's nothing ruled in or ruled out for the budget, which is happening
But
very,
do
very
you
shortly.
have an opinion?
Look, as I said to you, in a situation like this, it's not for me to make the decision.
I know it's not your decision, but what's your opinion?
I would have in the past been advocating for the carbon tax to be withheld and not to be put on the fuel to increase the price of the fuel. At the moment, we're in a very volatile situation where the price of oil is going up, and in a situation like that, we need to keep things very, very much on an even keel and to look after the people. And if that means that we have to hold back on those carbon taxes, well, then I support it.
Of course, the other side that certainly your colleagues have argued in ministers, they've talked about the warmer home scheme, just transition, the ways in which carbon tax is redirected into measures, many of them benefiting the Midlands. So if it was to be postponed or the increase even cancelled, would there be a negative effect here? Or would people not even notice?
No. Well, you see, we're still paying a carbon tax. What we've done is we've postponed the increases in the carbon tax. And so those monies will still be available, and they'll still be available for the likes of the Acre scheme, also for the warmer home scheme, and which means that we are retrofitting a huge amount of homes right across the country. And in fairness, we've got huge buy-in from the public on this. We've retrofitted huge, and we will retrofit a huge amount of homes going forward in the future. So there will be still money there to do that. It's just that the extra money that we had earmarked for doing more won't be available unless we increase the carbon tax. But we've got to look at it in a sensible manner too.
But carbon tax receipts are up from €935 million in 2023, and today there's a report it could hit 1.3 billion this year. So at what point does the government say enough?
Look, the whole idea behind carbon tax, right, it was all about being able to transition from fossil fuels over to renewables and over to making houses more eco-friendly, in the fact that you put in insulation, you also put in the air to water, and what that meant was that you no longer had a dependence on fossil fuels. That will increase going forward. And the more we do, the more we get the buy-in from the public, and the more grants that are available, the more that people take them up. So, for instance, in the case
but if it was working, Tony,
and
I'm sorry to interrupt, but if it was working,
you're okay.
Then shouldn't we see the revenue from carbon tax begin to fall? Because people would be moving away from those sources of fuel.
Yeah, I think we're just not at that situation at the moment, Will. I think we're moving forward, and we're moving at a very fast pace. We're moving forward to where we will be able to use those monies. But we're not anywhere near that at the moment. We're definitely not anywhere near that at the moment. Even if you just take a look yourself, if you go to housing estates, while there are more and more housing estates that have more and more solar panels on the roofs, and more people are buying into the insulation and also the air to water systems, there is still a lot more to be done. And we want to be able to provide the grants for people, so they're not taking the full burden on themselves. We want to incentivize people to take this move, because it is, in a lot of cases, for a lot of people, it's a serious and quite a costly move, and we want to be able to help them on that journey.
If we may come back to a point you mentioned earlier, so before October, government has another decision, much sooner, because the restoration of excise on petrol and diesel is scheduled to begin from the 1st of September. And your Fine Gael cabinet colleague, Peter Burke, says an early recall of the Dáil is under review. You're obviously a Fianna Fáil TD. Yeah. Should the Dáil now be recalled to postpone that increase, yes or no?
Yeah, well, it's not really a yes or no answer in a situation like that, because this is a decision for the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach to make. And if they decide that the Dáil needs to be recalled, as I said, we're looking at this constantly, and this is a constantly changing situation. If they decide that Dáil needs to be recalled, I know that myself and my colleagues in government have no problem and are 100% behind that.
But do they not ask you or your colleagues what you think?
Absolutely, we will get our opportunity to make those. But I think it's fair.
And what will you tell them? Will you tell them that your constituents cannot afford for the excise to be restored? Or are you content to sit on the fence and wait and see what they decide?
No, I think, to be totally honest with you, in a situation like that there, Will, right, I'll be putting the views of my constituents to Micheál Martin. And I have had many calls from constituents who are concerned about this, and I will be making sure that I pass those on to Micheál Martin, and my constituents have my full support. We have an office there in Tullamore. I've a lot of people calling in on a regular basis, and I am fully in contact with people on the ground. So I have been feeding that information into Micheál Martin's office and into the Parliamentary Party over the last couple of weeks.
And whatever about for domestic users of fuel, there will be businesses and hauliers in particular trying to plan. So when would you expect that decision to be made on whether to postpone the excise restoration or not? Because we're now on the 21st of August and it's due on the 1st of September.
Yeah, I would expect that to be done in the next week. Well, I would expect a decision to be made on that within the next 7 days. I know that the agri contractors, while they would normally be very busy over the summer, and they have been, but they're not as busy as they were because, unfortunately, the warmer weather meant that the growth of grass wasn't as much as it normally will. But we would hope that with a drop of rain that they'll get another cut or maybe another 2 cuts out of it before we hit the winter in order to hit so we don't encounter a fodder crisis. So that's why it's important that the decision is made very quickly so they have a reassurance while they're going in to the last part of the season for them.
Deputy Tony McCormack, Fianna Fáil TD for Offaly, thank you for taking the call today.
Thank you, Will.
083 30 10 103, text and WhatsApp powered by Lamb Brothers Toyota in Tullamore. Birdie and Moat, going back to how do we reach young men or indeed discipline teenagers who are underage and cannot be jailed under the criminal prosecution system. She says, how about a boot camp run by a few good army officers? Take young people from age 12 and onwards. That would straighten out a lot of misbehaviour very, very quickly, and have parents contribute to the cost. Will, with the greatest of respect, that's a very naive view. Parents should know where their children are at 3 a.m. When I was a teenager, one look from my parents told me that I was out of place. Colm in Roscommon says we should have TDs with conviction, and Tony McCormack sounds like he wouldn't dare go over Micheál Martin's head because he might get a slap on the wrist. He, therefore, does not deserve to hold that office. Well, did he nail his colours to the mast eventually? I'll let you decide. Will, I could never be a politician. It is an awful job, and no money would pay you to sit so uncomfortably on a fence defending the indefensible. That was painful, says a caller. Almost 11:20 now, live from Portlaoise College. Well, we have a bunch of very nervous people in front of us, but they're not Leaving Cert students. They're not nervous either. Mairead Lockman is here from Love HQ. She's the matchmaker from Mullingar. How are you?
Good morning. Happy Friday.
Do you remember results morning?
Yes, Mullingar, Loretto College in Mullingar. Terrified. But do you know what? It brought me all on the right path. All I wanted to do was study business studies. And guess what? We got going and that's what we did.
Excellent. Well, I don't know if matchmaking was on the CAO form though.
No, do you know what? There still is no CAO form for matchmaking, but business, it was nice, good and broad and everything like that. And actually, about 80% of my clients that come to me, when I ask them what they studied in college and what they now do for a living, it's completely different.
Oh, so many people.
Vast.
And if you asked many people in business, because that's perhaps one failing, at least it was in my day, of the education system. You were educated to go to college, not to be an entrepreneur, not to go into a trade, not to do all of these other things. But anyway, it's a more rounded experience today. Al Mitchell is here from Al's Fish Shop in Portarlington. Good morning.
Thanks very much, and delighted to be here, and best of luck to all the students today. Hopefully they all get what they want. Hope it's Christmas. Hope they do very well.
Do you have any connection now in your business to what you were studying in school?
None. When I left school, I went straight into Supermax on O'Connell Street in Dublin and worked there for a year, and I loved it. I went straight into the workforce. So,
Did you get addicted to the money coming in every week?
Loved it. And the partying.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So money and partying go hand in hand. This is not very good, helpful to students, though.
Well, no, but it's honest. We can't sugarcoat or pretend life isn't real.
No, life is it's a learning curve. You know, if I could go back and talk to myself 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or when I was doing Leaving Cert, oh God, it's nearly 40 years ago. But anyway,
you were the one who said that. I didn't.
Yeah. But if I could go back in time, talk to Al. And I'd probably be a different person now.
What would you say to him?
I'd say cop on, and put your head down and work hard, study maybe more, get to college, do what you want to do, experience life as well, travel.
Would young Al have listened?
Definitely not. No, I don't think so. It's very confusing actually. I don't know what I'm saying actually. I'm rambling.
Some
here.
lessons have to be learned the hard way, though.
I hate when I ramble. Yeah.
Let's move on to Clive.
Yes, thanks.
Clive Davis is the CEO at Youth Work Ireland, Laois. So,
good morning.
Good morning. Do you remember Leaving Cert results day?
I do remember Leaving Cert's day and hating it, but got what I wanted. I was a chef. That's what I started off my life many years ago, and went to Galway straight after Leaving Cert and had a whale of a time.
So was there therefore a well-made plan that came to fruition, or were there some diversions and tangents along the way?
There was a plan that I wanted at that stage. That's what I wanted to do. Life changes, and I don't do that now. I like cooking for friends, but I don't like cooking in sweaty kitchens for lots of people. But yeah, so I'm quite happy with what I'm at now.
But therefore, the best laid plans sometimes don't really matter. You can have one option in front of you. Life will present you with several more. Who's to say which one is the best?
Yeah, and I think that's probably the most important message to send out to the students that are listening to this today, that their plan is there because that's what they wanted today. But in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time, their plan might change. And they mightn't get the points that they're looking for today, but to be looking on to, you can do a PLC course and get in. Just because you didn't get the points in your Leaving Cert, you want to do medicine, you can still become a doctor. You don't have to look at those CEO points today. And also to think about the ones, because it's very exciting for those who are outside, here today celebrating. But I also think of the ones who didn't get what they wanted. And the families are disappointed, they're disappointed, and just to think that there's something else out there for you, and that there's supports and to have a chat to people. I think that's what's so important today, that you mightn't always get what you want firsthand, but just to put your head down and get some support in what you really want to do.
So the Leaving Cert is obviously our big focus today, but for much of the week, the whole country has been gripped in grief for what happened on the M9. Many having sympathy only for the innocent women and the child who were in the car, supposed to be in England now at a family wedding and celebrating. And as we know, that didn't happen because a group of 5 teenagers who, as the week went on, we learned they had been burgling houses. They were in a car that wasn't stolen, but hadn't been re-registered. It was bought for cash a very short time ago, and the registered owner had absolutely nothing to do with the events that unfolded on Sunday morning. But we then learned that 3 of them were known to TUSLA. 1, in fact, was in residential care with the organisation. And there was a whole debate about the sort of commentary that was online. Even the RIP notice for one of them had to be taken down. So vitriolic were some of the remarks. And while we can understand the anger, I suppose, make sense of that week and where your head was, Mairead, as you thought about all concerned.
Well, I suppose the first thing you're thinking about are the people that were innocent victims in it. You know, heading off on a family trip, the excitement, you know, the young fella in the car, all excited to be going to the airport, going off with his aunties and his mum to a family wedding, all the money and all the organising. Like, the reality of it, having to get up that early in the morning, you're a little bit dishevelled and everything, but the absolute terror that you would have had to deal with. Also as well for the paramedics that would have had to come across that. They don't know the full story when they rock up to an accident like that. All they know is there are 9 people that they have in front of them and they're trying to figure out who needs their help the most, the quickest. The trauma to them, the scenes that they would have seen, everything like that. I will say I myself was driving between Kinnegad and Mullingar in March this year, 2026, on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. So it wasn't the middle of the night. Daylight, 10 a.m. And a car was coming towards me at a reasonable speed on the wrong side of the motorway. So that's between Kinnegad and I'll be more specific, between Kinnegad and Carlstown.
So just to help us imagine this, you're in which lane?
I was in the fast lane driving. And I'm like, it's a normal Sunday morning, dressed up, going down to see my grandparents in the nursing home, you know, normal, just tipping away. And next thing I see a car coming at a good reasonable speed on the wrong way at the motorway. Immediately terrified.
And are they in a lane or are they on the hard shoulder?
They are in a lane. Half on the lane, half on the hard shoulder is what I would say. But they were going at speed and I got immediately terrified. Okay, now I do a huge amount of driving to... You know, as a matchmaker, I'm driving all over Ireland, all times, a day and night, meeting clients all over Dublin, Galway, Cork, everything. I'm well used to driving. I have never come across this before in my life. My immediate thought was, is it somebody that's trying to do away with themselves? Because why else would you... I've never gone the wrong way down the lane.
And in which case, are they going to aim at you?
That's it. And that was my immediate thought. The panic... and what are you going to do in that situation? And that is a question that we need to ask ourselves. What are you going to do if you're driving down at a normal, reasonable, legal speed and someone is driving towards you? Are you going to continue on the fast lane? Are you going to go into the slower lane? Are you going to go into the hard shoulder? Like, what are you going to do in that moment?
So
now,
we tried to tease that out with the driving instructor earlier in the week, Joe Wynn from Tullamore, and he made the point, there's nothing in any textbook. There's no rule of the road to cover that scenario. Yeah. Even the RSA, they were under pressure from the minister to be more vocal about this during the week. And there is no, this is the defined right thing to do.
That's it.
I suppose all you can do is try and reduce your speed to minimise the impact.
Well, my immediate thought was, 1, for my own safety, 2, to get the number plate of the car, of which I could get part of it, not all of it, because they were driving so quickly. And third of all, I rang, as soon as I was past them, I rang Mullingar Guard Station, who were very quick, very quick at answering, very quick at getting the information. And you could hear there was kind of a panic to get going and sort this out.
And so the car, did it divert at all when it saw you? Did they go into the hard shoulder?
I obviously pulled right over as far as I could in the fast lane, as far over to the verge, and they just continued just straight. I didn't get who was driving it, anything like that, and I'd normally be quite clued into all of this, but I just did as much as I could with the adrenaline pumping in that moment. And that's Mullingar. That's only March. That's 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning.
But add into that then, it's night time, it's dark.
Yeah.
Dazzling lights coming towards
the
you.
Adrenaline
or
and
sometimes
speed,
no lights.
Yes, exactly. That's the other side of it, So it is terrifying. I will say I was driving down here today and, you are kind of thinking to yourself, because I was on the motorway, and I was thinking to myself, what would you do in that situation?
There's a huge amount of trust that as drivers we will behave in a certain way.
Absolutely.
Al, has anything like that ever happened to you?
No, but it is a terrifying ordeal. I was shocked. I just couldn't believe that 5 people could get into a car and drive the wrong way down. I mean, it's insane. It's like, it's definitely down to upbringing. I know I've 3 kids, and I know for a fact not one of them would get into a car and drive it down without tax, insurance, never mind without, and then driving down the wrong way down the road. And I've spoke to lots of people in the shop about this recently, and we were going, when Well, I don't know. I have to be careful. You have to dance on this one, don't you? Dance lightly around here. You can't say what's actually what I really want to say. But anyway,
what do you want to say?
My opinion on it is it shouldn't have happened. It should never have happened, and definitely their parents are seriously responsible for it. It's awful story. I can't say any more. That's it.
Did you ever contemplate what you would do in that scenario if you saw a car hurtling towards you on the road?
There's very little you can do. I mean, you can pull over to the side, you can try and get a number plate, but in those situations, you're in a sort of a panicked situation. You're full of adrenaline. You want to get out of the way. You know, there's no way you're going to allow. Your brain's not thinking about, I'm going to get their number plate and ring the guards now straight away. You know, that's the last thing you're thinking of. You want to get to the side. You want to survive the ordeal. And
when you
those
hear
kids
this
in
week
that
about,
car, those kids in that car, there had to be at least one of them in that car that did not want to be there. You know, I could just imagine the fear in one of their, has to be awful. It's horrible.
But when you go online and you see that there are others who have filmed it and then loaded it to TikTok and they're getting cheered on, that it's not just an isolated incident, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think social media, a lot of people are blaming social media, but social media isn't really to blame. I think us now here talking about it on live radio is another thing that is actually promoting it. You know, we're promoting it. I mean, there was we're
not promoting.
Well,
we're not saying it's something
you know what
I'm
saying. Yeah, I'm not saying promotion, but there was a study done in America a long time ago about suicides and suicide awareness and things. But when a suicide happened in a certain area and when it was highly publicised,
the copycat
suicides went up. And the more you report on something, the more you are popular. Well, it becomes more popular, I'm afraid. And unfortunately, that's the reality of it. And if you want to report on it, maybe it should be less reporting on it. And,
well, that was a catch-22 for many media organisations earlier this week. How widely known was it that Gardaí could not pursue on the motorway if they went in the wrong direction?
Yeah, if it wasn't publicised, they wouldn't know that, you know.
But so we had to weigh that up and thought, well, on one hand, there's a genuine public policy debate to be had here. On the other, yes, you may inform people who didn't otherwise know. But if you're a criminal and that's your mindset, you're already aware. I don't think it was the criminal fraternity were in the dark and we suddenly turned a spotlight on it.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't flick a switch and it just appeared. Yeah, no, that's very true, actually.
Clive, you work with young people. Give us some insights, perhaps, as to
and I suppose
how they could go so wrong.
Yeah, and I suppose we're very privileged that we're sitting here. And you have to be conscious of your unconscious bias when you're talking and having these conversations. But, you know, the reality of it is that, you know, there are people injured and there's also people who have died. And I want to give my condolences to the family of those young boys, you know, because I can only imagine what they're going through. And I know there's a piece out there about they're to blame and, you know, Tusla was involved and bits and pieces like that. But coming from the young person's point of view and listening to them and, you know, wanting to empathise with them and try to put them on the straight and narrow, the reality of it is that we are so underfunded. You know, that there's never any money for preventative work with young people. So
for example,
so like those young people or any young person who goes to court and the judge says, oh, you have to do this or that, and there's lots of money when they commit the crime. There's lots of money there for support around when they commit the crime. But there's no support when I go in or when my staff or our organisation goes into a housing estate and we see those young people at 10 and 11 and 12. And we want to go in and we want to support them. We want to listen to them. We want to feed them. We want to put our arm the organisation wants to put their arm around them and make them feel like that there's someone to speak to. You know, you can have a conversation with us. And that's what annoys me about this whole thing, is that this is preventable with preventable work. Like, the guards have come out now, they had no pursuit training for following those young people down that motorway. Straight away, there's been, first of all, there was no money
money because they were because of the extra work for the European Union, and that's been held, and they were doing that. And then straight away, then typical Ireland, they found money to get this pursuit trained in some part of Wales, and they're coming over to train them in Ireland. And that was almost like the tick box. That's a typical Ireland thing. Tick the box for there. But for us and for society, we need to be looking at these families of disadvantage and how can we support them more, you know? And I've heard all the things about, blame the parents, and so, but the reality of it is maybe the parents needed support as well, you know? So it's a 360.
The perception that seems to come across from a lot of listeners is that some of these parents are indifferent. They do not know and do not care where their child is at 3 a.m. How much would that be the exception rather than the rule, in your experience?
But I'd say if that is the rule, why? Like, if that is what people are seeing, well, why? There's a reason behind that, and it's understanding that. It's family support. There's lots of agencies out there who would give those people support, but their resources are cut back, you know? And I don't want to say that we have all the answers to everything, but when a young person is causing havoc on the street, and we're called, and someone says, such and such a person is causing havoc on the street, the first thing I'll do is ask why. Why are you in the shopping centre causing havoc over there on a Tuesday morning? Like, why? I've nowhere else to go. You know, I've nothing to do. You know, and then it's like an onion. You peel back each layer of the onion, and suddenly you find out that inner piece in the middle is the bit that has never been looked at. You know.
But there are listeners who will argue, at what point does personal responsibility kick in? That we were all bored at some point in our lives, but it didn't give us license to go out and wreak havoc.
But I like, it's not normal behaviour to rob houses and to go down the motorway on the wrong way. So the answer, the question to me is always why? Why are you doing that? You know, we'll never know why now with those young men who were in there, and it also kind of when you see that one of the RIPs had to be taken down from that young man, that's disgraceful. That a family couldn't mourn their son because of the keyboard warriors who were putting stuff up. Yes, I 100% am angry. I was angry when I saw that. Like I drive that M9 all the time, and I see that road, and I can picture myself. I grew up in a tie, you know, so I can picture that road. I can picture where it happened, and I think if that happened to me, I would be scared out my wits. Like, where would you go? There's a concrete barrier in the centre of that road, so there's nowhere to go.
But you can have compassion without condoning.
But I think we have to have compassion. I think Ireland is a very compassionate country. But I think what happens is the keyboard warriors, who are nameless, are making this about something that's not.
I think, though, there was a lot of posts on social media that inflamed the situation. So it was posts about and videos saying, poor whoever, we won't name any names, and them then putting up videos of them in the act. That it's not the first time, it's not an isolated, it was not the first time for them to drive down that motorway on the wrong side that day either. And so I think for a lot of people that, you know, might inflame them. We don't know how as you said, there is bias there for our own personal circumstances. There could be someone, you know, that has had a member of their family die on the roads. There might have been someone who has been burgled recently, or whose grandparents have been burgled, or something like that along the way. And I do understand you asking why and everything like that, but I also think that people can be outraged equally as well and say that this is not, you know, not appropriate behaviour, because it's not appropriate behaviour in a civilised society. And yes, I do agree that there needs to be more done. I think a lot of it stems as well from, like, even the family law courts, you know, like, when was the last time any of the judges that sit on the family law courts got up and got out and went to these estates and saw how these people are living? You know, I volunteered with a group, an emergency services type group in the Midlands over 2 years ago, and I will say I was in houses that I never thought that children could be living in these circumstances, in houses that had no carpets on the floor, in houses that had one briquette to light. I was out in a house in an emergency situation 3 or 4 days before Christmas. It was freezing. There was children in the house, but there was no Christmas decorations up. We knew not to ask the children what they're getting off Santa. We knew, because there was nobody coming. Okay, so like people are growing up with that. People are removed from the reality of it. I didn't know people like this lived. I know there's poverty in Ireland, but I didn't know that this is what it looked like. So I think there is an exception for all the different, but like how people are brought up. And I'm not saying that I don't have sympathy in this situation. I think everybody needs to be a certain level of responsibility, especially when it is an action that's going over and over and has such a high consequence. We haven't heard from that family this week, as far as I know. We don't know the extent of it. There could possibly be 9 people that were deeply...
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not, obviously. So I think there has to be a little bit as well. And I do think the supports that follow beforehand. You know, we are saying they are known to TUSLA, okay? We can throw TUSLA's name around as well. There's only so many resources that TUSLA have. I know people that work in TUSLA in the Midlands as well. Excellent people with very limited resources. By the time those children go to TUSLA, they're already damaged to an extent. And I mean that in the most generous sense of the word. What they have seen, we can never imagine. Like you were even saying there, I want to feed those children. That is sometimes the baseline. Sometimes it's even they don't have... We have no concept. Anybody in a civilised, normal lifestyle here in Ireland, in the Midlands, that are listening to this, you have no idea what there's children living in our own community are seeing on a daily basis, what they don't have.
And we drive past them. Like, we drive past them every single day, and we see them on the road. We see them, you know, we don't do it. And like, I have empathy. My own brother died in a car crash. He was 11 years of age, you know. It's a long, long time ago now. So I have empathy. I don't want to be coming across like, the young lads, if they had help. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just trying to stand back from this situation and say, how as a society can we make this, that doesn't happen again?
Al, final word to you. You've listened to the two perspectives beside you. Where does your sympathy lie?
Yeah, it's a very difficult one because you're on both sides of the fence on this one, and it's very hard to actually... You know, you're on one side you're this, and the other side you're that, and then there's a middle ground. And the middle ground, you've both highlighted that there very clearly. And you don't think about these things when these tragedies happen. You've made me think a lot. But still, I really believe they should never have been out on the road at 3 o'clock in the morning, driving down the wrong way and smashing into another car and causing absolute carnage. I think it's disgraceful, and I do still believe it's down to parenting. I'm sorry if you disagree with me there, but
we're allowed to disagree, and this is all about opinions and respecting opinions too. And we're not, unfortunately, the world can become very black and white, but we like to have grey and a bit of discussion.
And there's a lot of grey.
On our Friday panel, Alan Mitchell of Al's Fish Shop in Portarlington, Clive Davis of Youth Work Ireland, and Mairead Lockman of Love HQ. It's 11:45 already. The Irish Times reported earlier this week on the complaints that Met Éireann has received over the last year, including, for instance, one person who was told in June that it would be 26 degrees, but when they looked up their hometown of Tralee in County Kerry, it said only 16 degrees. Seemingly there was some technical error on the website. But the one that really caught our eye was the individual who decided he was going to cut the grass, and there was only a 5% chance of rain. However, when he did go out with a lawnmower, there was a deluge on top of him. And so displeased he was, he decided to write his letter to Met Éireann. Al, this amused you.
Yeah, that guy's a dumbass. Sorry. Oh my God. What a waste of fucking time. As Tom Hanks said, stupid is what stupid does, you know. That was absolutely insane. Why would you waste your time? He actually physically wrote it, did he?
Must have, yeah.
Damn. No, I have no time for that crap now, I'm sorry.
You could do you remember the White Moose Cafe in Dublin?
Yeah, brilliant.
And
the reviews, everything.
He would deal with complaints and unhappy customers in a fairly blunt way, shall we say.
Yeah.
I could imagine that would be the situation in Al's Fish Shop.
Yeah, well, I handle complaints fairly okay, I think. I mean, you have to approach people with, you know, a little bit of positivity as well. But sometimes it's the other thing that gets up my goat actually in the shop. Someone comes into me and says, "Is the fish fresh?" I go, "No, it's last year's." You know what I mean? It's like, or if I put it in,
I think they mean is how fresh is the fish?
Is it fresh frozen? I think
like, why would you have a fresh fish shop if you're not selling fresh fish, it's a kind of a given, or if I put it in the freezer, how long will it be till I take it out and I go until you open the door, it's like, it's
So they ask how maybe the fish has been, I don't know, treated as a farm fish or fresh.
No, there's a lot of that, there's a lot. And,
where does it come from?
And there's a lot of questions like that. And fish is farmed, yes, some. But there's lots of wild fish as well. Are we talking about fish now?
And does that make a difference?
It makes a huge difference to the customer and me. I love to sell good quality Irish wild white fish. It's absolutely fantastic. It's great quality. It's like at the moment in the shop at the moment, guys. Anyone's around Port Darlington, they've got beautiful fresh hake from Dingle.
There you go.
Anyway.
Turn it into a plug. Buy Al's fish. Do your matchmaking with Mairead. I'm not sure what you're selling, Clive.
Yeah. I'm just here helping. We're all helping with the stomach, with the love.
Although you were saying it's a particular season for love.
It's cuffing season, so basically, like we are animals if you think about it. So people, this one of my busiest times of year is this time of year. People looking for love, who they're going to hibernate with for the winter. So this time of year on Valentine's Day is my particularly busy time. And of course, we'll be seeing you down at the Ploughing Championships like we always do this year, helping The Farmer Wants a Wife. So it's any country people or anything like that looking for love, we'll help you also.
And have you found wives for farmers?
Oh my goodness, hundreds. Actually,
I'm looking... Have there been some farmers you cannot find a wife for?
Also that. Some of them we have to talk about basic hygiene and so on. I had to bring in a rule of having to dress like you would going on a date because a gentleman came in one day straight from, we'll call it the birthing suite of his farm without showering. So anyway, look, you get all sorts. The thing is, the only thing I have in common, or they all have in common, is they're all looking for love. But
so some things aren't good fresh.
So some things are not good fresh. But like, I think when you're dealing with the public, and this is what we're talking about with Met Éireann, somebody writing in a letter of complaint about the rain, because when you're dealing with the public, anything can happen.
Do you ever complain, Clive?
All the time.
But just to yourself, or do you write reviews? Do you send letters?
No, I'm very much into, if I go to a restaurant and it's not nice, I would complain. But I'll also go to a restaurant if I get good service, I will also compliment. I think that's the bit we miss out on. But no, I've no problem complaining. If it's wrong, we should say it and we should spit it out, because you have to do that. Like, Mairead should be looking for a lady for that farmer who can't smell. Do you know? That might be a great way.
She doesn't smell, she can't smell.
No, she can't smell.
She can't smell,
She can't smell for that farmer who's come from the birthing suite.
Or you could do it the other way around, get a really stinky one.
Maybe somebody was born with a clothes peg on their nose.
Yeah.
Let's see how cultured we are. So, the survey during the week was about the shows on TV and the films that you need to know in order to be considered cultured. And The Matrix came in at number 2. Pulp Fiction, Breaking Bad, Peaky Blinders are also in the top 10. But what was number 1? And have you seen it? The Godfather.
I've tried to watch Godfather.
I just fall asleep.
I couldn't do it.
I actually read the book.
I feel awful.
I've never watched.
There's always somebody who has read the book, isn't there? You know what?
Sorry now, I say that like I've read any book in the last 20 years. I went on holidays earlier this year and I was like, I brought a book, brought it home again.
And did you watch the movie first?
No, I didn't. I actually just read the book, so I did. But we are back onto The Sopranos at the moment, myself and himself. And I'm telling you, it's a good old classic if you want to get back into it.
Classic?
Yeah, Sopranos.
Classic?
Yeah, it is brilliant.
You can't call it classic. It's only what? 14, 15 years old?
No, it's well over 20.
No,
it's not, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. That's it. How old are you now, Will?
45.
Sorry, is this a matching thing we're seeing here?
No. To me, I tried to match him 10 times.
You're married, Will.
Yeah, his wife even rang me and asked me to match him.
Okay, to me Laurel and Hardy is classic.
Yeah. No, but it is brilliant. And like, it is lovely to sit down and watch something and really get into it. Like, we're really back into it again. But like, there's a lot of stuff on there now at the moment on Netflix and everything. Like, how many hours would you be spending scrolling just trying to find something?
You'd never
to watch?
leave the house, because I remember I got into Game of Thrones many years ago, and I got the box set and I sat down and I was sick and I spent about 2 weeks looking at nothing, only Game of Thrones, ordering takeaways, getting to the house, and I remember then leaving the house after 2 weeks and ducking because I thought a dragon was going to hit me on the way down the road because I was so enthralled. So I just love getting into a good box set, and it's that thing. I find the worst thing about box sets is when you finish it and you're asking your friends, and I'm really judgy. If someone gives you a really bad one, they get an X.
There's actually a couple that regularly give us reviews, and now when they give it, we're like, we'll just leave that one to one side. Yeah,
I loved Breaking Bad. I thought that was
brilliant.
A really good TV show. It actually made you feel for everybody. You loved one character, then you hated him, and then you loved this character, and then you hated him. It was just like, it was just constant.
That's great writing.
It was, it was. You were pulling at yourself. You go, oh my god, this is awful. You're torn between one character and another all the time.
He was a teacher, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a chemistry teacher. Yeah. And Jesse, it was just so good. It was just really.
I'll stick to Star Trek and be a nerd.
Oh, I love Star Trek. I'm a major Star Trek fan.
Good.
I love it. Yeah.
That's where we have to leave it, I'm afraid, guys. So thank you so much for joining us on the Friday panel. And indeed, thank you to Sinead Hubble for putting it all together, and to Connor, and to all back at base, Adam Engineering. And most of all, thank you to People First Credit Union, peoplefirstcu.ie, and Portlaoise College for hosting us here today. The best of luck to all getting the results. And remember, there will always be options. Chat to you soon. Bye-bye.